Essentially what we're seeking is the use of the Progressive Development Overlay District for a potential industrial park development that is located just east of Basket Road and north of Route 104. It's comprised of 4 or 5 parcels totaling roughly 104 acres. So what the Progressive Development District Overlay does is it provides a mechanism when not all of the exact details of the end users are known at this point. It allows for greater flexibility in regards to setbacks, placement of buildings, things of that nature, without really affecting the underlying permitted uses of the district. So I know that Matt Chatfield from WEDA is here tonight. He's been working very closely with the owners and developers of this project. I guess Webster, this site has been shortlisted by several big ticket companies for potentially relocating to this site. So we've had several meetings with them, and it was determined that this would probably be the most appropriate mechanism for a project of this magnitude and of this type to go through. And the first step is to ask for consideration of using the PDD designation. So that's what we're here tonight to do. But before that can be approved, there must be a public hearing. So the resolution on tonight's agenda is to set that public hearing for an upcoming town board.
Matt, is there anything you'd like to add to that, or?
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm Matt Chatfield. I'm an executive director of the Webster Economic Development Alliance, and that is the case. We have been working very diligently over the past several years with Mr. Burrows and his team to prepare this 100-acre facility for future development. It is currently zoned industrial. It's one of the few industrially zoned parcels of that size, 100 acres, or the collection thereof, in the Finger Lakes region that has access to both rail, high power, gas, water, and is within the Monroe County as well. So, and part of the impetus behind this is the Alliance and myself, we've been asking Mr. Burrows to move forward with at least preparing the site such that if a suitor comes along, that the time from signing a contract to shovel in the ground is reduced, because all of the site selectors and all of the requirements that are seeking large pieces of land, time to shovel in the ground is critical. So anything that we can be doing as a community and as a private property owner to facilitate expediting that is only to our benefit to attract the job creation and investment in our community. So that's what this process will begin.
And before, I mean, we've been, for lack of a better term, working with the Burrows and the key person, but with Josh and Tony Kashani has helped a lot as the chair of the planning board, because, and so has Dolly, because I always go to you to look at precedents. What have we done in the past? What have ordinance shown? This is kind of one that we couldn't find something we've done similar to this in Webster in the past. 100-acre parcel that is already zoned industrial to set it up this way.
Typically, it's an end user is found immediately, and then,
Right.
then they begin the process. Unfortunately, that's really not the preferred route for this particular property, unless Mr. Burrows was intending on just starting to put up buildings on speculation,
Right.
which I don't think would be the wise
Doesn't make
route.
sense.
It doesn't make sense in the current climate to do that for a whole host of reasons. But moving forward, at least in earnest with preparing the land for development and understanding what the community would be comfortable seeing there, we'd like to get that dialogue going sooner rather than later, rather than waiting for the end user.
So we really don't know who the end users will be at this point, correct?
Correct. There are several large end users, circling this site along with a myriad of other sites. We have been shortlisted multiple times. We've had several site visits. We've had several phone calls. Nothing has resulted in anything yet. Some of that comments that have come back have been, we need to be able to move faster. It hasn't been solely the comment, but anything we can do to ensure that we look as good as possible on paper while protecting the residents of the surrounding area and, obviously meeting the requirements of the code and of the town. We're looking to do that.
So we don't know what the end users companies are they American companies, are they foreign companies, none of that, right? Or no?
Correct. We typically do not, and most of these things that come from our regional and state site selectors are actually very confidential. I do know a few pieces of information. I do not know the names of the corporations. Some of them we do know what they're making, but we don't know the origin of the corporate body. And I'm glad for somebody to be considering investing several $100 million in our community. I think it would be a good thing, even if it is money that wouldn't necessarily come from a different shore.
Megan, I mean, the path on this, and let's say as we move past the public hearing, let's say the town board issues the PDD, it still would then go to the planning board. Is that correct after that? Or I should ask Josh.
I'll let Josh chime in on the mechanics because he's the one in charge of that.
Yeah, so establishing the PDD, as I mentioned earlier, essentially just allows for flexibility when it comes to placing the buildings, lot area, things of that nature. But yes, if the board chooses to establish the PDD, it would then be referred to the planning board, and then they would review it, issue a preliminary overall, and then as the actual users are identified, they would also come back to the planning board for final.
But then, because it's industrial, it would come back to this board
For an industrial use permit.
Right.
Concurrent with the site plan review.
The town board gets at least one more look at anything that goes on that site prior to any sort of shelving. There would be at least a public hearing for this public hearing, then there would be at least one more public hearing as part of the site plan review process. So there's at least 2 public hearings, plus an additional town board permit. And it still has to go through the seeker process. And that's really the impetus behind this, is to understand what the maximum development intensity that the community is comfortable seeing on that site, based on whatever is currently zoned, it's permitted per the zoning. It's not asking for any variances and any uses. That's good. So whatever those development intensities are, identify what that could be, number of square feet, cars, traffic. Once we get those parameters set, it makes it a lot smoother sailing, so that when a user does come in and they do have to get the final site plan for their lot, it should be a much diminished time. We should be able to get them in and through the door in 90 days or less, and that's the goal. So we can hit the 90 days, that's critical.
I'm sorry. So those parameters are set for the maximum allowance with respect to the PDDs. Is that right, Josh, or did I misunderstand your conversation?
Well, I think that the seeker process will identify the maximum parameters of what the town can.
For the total acre, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Well, the PDD doesn't trump, like, for instance, I know our code, when we looked at this, it's about 1.3 million of square foot of buildings that can go on this 100 acres. And so a PDD doesn't all of a sudden wave a magic wand and get rid of that. If they if somebody comes in with more than that in the future, $1.3 million, they'd have to get a variance from the ZBA, correct?
Correct. If they're exceeding the lot coverage, yes.
And I got, Tony Kachani's been great about this. He's helped as the planning board, because he's, you know, he appreciates the fact that for Webster to be in a position with these opportunities for 100-acre industrial property, these type of places, and Matt, you've said it, they don't want ambience of this being a 3-year process.
No, not at all. And this is a good exercise. I hate to call it an exercise, but it's good to go through this process. I think Josh is learning a lot, and Mr. Genesi is also learning a lot about the limitations of our code in this realm, and how can we move quickly, safely, protect the public, yet also not be unduly onerous on an applicant. And there will be more industrial actions that come along, just based on all of the industrial land we have in town, including the Xerox campus. Our portion of it has changed hands. Some will likely change hands again in the future. It would be great for us to have a more streamlined approach that will only behoove us in the future.
You brought all your stuff, but I don't know if you really need to show anything. It might be more, or before you left.
Does the board have any specific questions at this point?
I
don't mind. It's pretty self-explanatory.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Fee schedule doesn't change at all, right?
I think you're good.
Okay, I do have a couple questions if I can, of the board, if I can
Sure.
take just a few minutes. I promise I won't take long because they already covered most everything that I was going to cover, and I appreciate that. So I'm Sean Simoy with Pastor Associates, here to help represent the project. I'm a project engineer on this project, and so as was mentioned, you know, this is a large project. It has a lot of potential. There are people interested, and we just want to make it more marketable, but also want to make sure, as Matt mentioned, that it keeps the town safe and that it's smart development and gives the opportunity to make sure that, you know, it's not put together haphazard. The PDD, as you know, we were reviewing and looking at it, I think it was already mentioned, does not open Pandora's box. It doesn't allow people to do whatever they want. They still fall within the parameters of lot coverage and things like that, but it does give some flexibility to allow for that smart development. An example would be, we would be designing the storm and sanitary sewer up front, so it would be shared among the 4 different lots, as opposed to putting them in piece by piece and maybe, you know, not getting as good of a design. So it allows for smarter development. Like I said, almost everything else that I would have covered has already been covered, but I do have a couple questions for the board, just to, and for Josh, just to make sure that we approach this correctly and appropriately. One is in the zoning code section 225.21G4, which is one of the ones that Josh had sent to us. It talks about how the approval, once it's approved for a PDD, it's then handled by the planning board, as long as that it doesn't exceed 10% of what was approved by the town board. It can be handled by the planning board. Our understanding and interpretation of that is that anything underneath, you know, the 1.4, 1.3, whatever the town board approves, it can be less, and the town board has that purview. It's just when it exceeds it by 10%, that would be when the client would need to come back to the town board to modify the PDD. And I want to make sure that our understanding of that is correct. Is that?
I share that same understanding. Charlie, do you have any insight?
It's not unfortunately set in the code. Do you have it?
No, I don't have the subsections F and G.
Yeah.
I don't have them in front of me, unfortunately.
I would go along with your, excuse me, Josh. From my years on the planning board of PDD, 10% was always the threshold that would send it back. Anything on less than that, continue forward.
10% above and beyond, right? So yes, I think your interpretation is aligned with ours.
All right, and I appreciate that. And with the industrial permit, the process would be that after the PDD is approved, we'd submit for an industrial permit, and that would also be a one-time approval, assuming that we stay within the approved parameters, and as opposed to, 4 different developers coming in to get an industrial permit. Is that a correct interpretation?
I believe so. I know that we've had a couple in our, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
You talk about industrial use permit?
Yes, sorry, industrial use permit.
Yes, so, we do have an example, not anything at this scale, but there is a site in town that received an overall industrial use permit, and it has several users within that same property, so I would use that as a precedent. And yes, as long as everything is covered that could conceivably come in during that approval process, then yes, it would be covered under a singular permit.
And obviously, if something came that was out of the scope of that approved permit, it would have to
They
be
would have to come
looked
back.
at again.
Correct.
Well, generally, if the industrial use permit is granted to the site, and there are portions thereof that are going to vary, then they come in, the applicant will come in for a modification or amendment of an industrial use permit.
Meaning if it's not something that's covered under what was already approved.
Correct.
If it varies from the approved.
Yes.
Understood. And then the other part I just wanted to verify or check is if it is the intent of the town board to declare their intent to be lead agency, so the seeker process can start, and if that seeker process would cover both the PDD and the development of the site, or would there be a need for a second seeker process?
Yeah, well, the code that we discovered a couple of days ago, the subsections F and G do allude to the town board conducting the seeker. Is that your understanding, and is that how it's typically been done? The only example I can think of in my time here is when the rezoning on Salt Road, the town board did undertake seeker and declare themselves lead agency for that. However, when the actual subdivision proposal came through, the planning board conducted the seeker.
The legislative act, which is the creation of the PDD, would be headed up by, the seeker for that would be headed up by the town board. But I think then when you get into the development of the project, it might be a different seeker, or that would be piggybacked onto the prior seeker. The town board would be lead agency for the PDD, but that doesn't mean for each of the projects that take place. They would have to have their own seeker process.
So the seeker process by the town board for the PDD, and then the planning board would handle the seeker process separately
Yeah,
for the development,
for each of the, yeah, because.
For each lot.
for each lot, as opposed to getting one that covers the whole development.
Correct. That's analogous to, really, to the rezone that Josh just talked about.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. Those are the things I just wanted to clear up so that we can, move forward. Looking forward to working with, the town board and then the planning board and working with Josh on this project. So, thank you.
Well,
Separate.
no, not at all, Jack.
So I'm just curious about, we don't know what the businesses are, we don't know understand the issue of the industrial use permit, and we don't know what the business is. You just said generic.
You wouldn't know what it is before you issue the industrial use permit.
Okay,
Whatever business it is, it has to come in front of us to get the industrial use permit.
all right.
They don't get it
I
with
misunderstood
PDD.
that, I thought we were going to issue.
They don't get it with the PDD, they just get, the PDD just allows them to develop the property as a progressive overlay district.
And I was thinking, the short form seeker is type 2. Any chance, this has got to be a type 1, right?
Probably is, yes.
Okay. And if I understood it correctly, like if one company comes in and builds $1.3 million, just one company, then it's probably one seeker process for that one company. If it ends up being that there's 5 different companies on this 100 acres, well then they probably have 5 different seekers. Okay, I did understand that. I'm getting there. Little by little, right? All right, any other comments or questions? Thanks. Okay. Well, I make a motion to set a public hearing for October 6, 2022, at 7:30 p.m. here in the Webster Town Board meeting room for the establishment of a progressive development district overlay, better known as a PDD. Am I saying industrial use?
No.
Let's start this again. Okay, my motion is to set a public hearing for October 6, 2022, here in the town board meeting room at 7:30 p.m. for the establishment of progressive development district overlay, better known as PDD, for the proposed northeast area of technology industrial park on Tebor Road, and to be advertised in the Wednesday, September 21st, 2022 Webster Herald.
Second.
Supervisor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilman Abbott?
Aye.